Number 1. The Bear Lake Monster. The lake sits on the border of Utah and Idaho, covering 109 square miles of turquoise water. On July 27th of 1868, the Deseret News printed an article that would shape the next 150 years of Western American folklore. The author was Joseph C. Rich. His father was Charles C. Rich, an apostle of the Latter-day Saints. Rich described settlers in the Bear Lake Valley who had heard Shoshone oral traditions of a creature that attacked swimmers. He added his own eyewitness framing. Several settlers, he wrote, had seen a large serpentine body moving through the shallow water near the eastern shore. Brigham Young, then president of the Mormon Church, read the article and responded with genuine alarm. He sent a set of ropes, pulleys, and grappling tackle to the Bear Lake Valley. The intention was to help the settlers capture the creature and drag it ashore. No such capture ever occurred. Young's intervention is preserved in Mormon settlement archives and marks one of the earliest documented institutional responses to a cryptid report in North American history. Rich would later admit that his article had been partly exaggerated. He described it as, in his own words, a first-rate lie. But he insisted the Shoshone stories predated his article. Those stories have never been fully documented in writing by native speakers, which complicates any modern evaluation. Size estimates from settlers varied enormously. Some accounts described the creature as 40 feet long. Others placed it at 200 feet. In 1874, a settler named Melando Pratt reported something larger than a horse with a serpentine body and 18-inch legs. Colors mentioned across accounts range from dark brown to muddy green. Speeds estimated by observers sometimes reach 60 miles per hour, a figure implausible for any known swimming vertebrate. The sightings did not stop in the 19th century. In July of 2002, a Garden City resident named Brian Hershey told reporters that his small fishing boat had been jostled by something large. He claimed to see a 50-foot creature with glowing red eyes before it submerged. Benjamin Radford of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry investigated and concluded there was no supporting physical evidence. The skeptical biology is straightforward. Bear Lake contains the Bonneville cutthroat trout, a subspecies that can exceed 24 pounds. It also contains the Bonneville cisco, a small whitefish species found nowhere else on Earth, spawning by the millions each January. Large cutthroat creates substantial surface wakes. Any dark log caught in a current can suggest a moving body, but Bear Lake also has geological strangeness. The lake sits on the Bear Lake Graben, a tectonic fault line formed approximately 28,000 years ago. Its semi-alkaline chemistry is unusual for the region. Its depth and isolation have invited speculation about relic species, though no evidence has ever supported that idea. Today, the legend is a tourism asset. Paddleboat cruises leave ideal beach resort during summer months. The annual Raspberry Days Festival features monster-themed floats. A Bear Lake monument sculpture was commissioned in the 1990s. Cryptozoologist Carl Schuker has grouped the Bear Lake reports with Loch Ness, Okanagan, and Lake Champlain under a shared freshwater serpent archetype. Why a high-altitude semi-alkaline lake produces this specific cryptid, and why the pattern repeats across the globe, is a question worth keeping in mind as we move east across the Atlantic. Number 2. The Lagarfljót Worm. The earliest written reference to a creature in Lagarfljót appears in the Icelandic annals under the year 1345. The entry is brief. It notes that a great worm had been seen in the lake, arching its body above the water. That reference alone is extraordinary. It is one of the oldest written lake cryptid records anywhere in the world. The folkloric origin story is older still. A young woman was given a gold ring by her mother. She was told to place the ring beneath a small heath dragon, a folk term for what appears to be a kind of snake or worm, to make the gold multiply. The worm and the gold grew together. The worm grew so large and terrifying that the woman eventually threw it into the lake. There, it continued to grow. The shape of this tale follows a Norse mythological archetype. The Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr, encircles the world beneath the sea. Icelandic historian Sigurdur Nordal argued in the mid-20th century that the Lagarfljót tradition is a direct folk echo of that older myth. Egert Olafsson, an Icelandic scholar, surveyed eastern Iceland in the years 1749 and 1750. He recorded Lagarfljót worm reports in detail. Witnesses described a creature up to 300 feet long with multiple humps visible above the water surface. The consistency of the humps across 3 centuries of reports is one of the oddest features of Lagarfljót Folklore. Then came February of 2012. A farmer named Jurtur Krolf filmed a 49-second video on the shore of the lake. The video showed what appeared to be a massive serpentine shape moving through icy water, undulating in a way that seemed biological. He uploaded it to YouTube. Within 2 weeks, it had accumulated over 7 million views. News outlets from the BBC to The Guardian ran stories. For a short window, Iceland's medieval cryptid was global news. The Icelandic government did something unusual in response. The Fljótsdalshéraði Municipal Council convened what became known as the Truth Commission. Its mandate was to formally rule on whether the video was authentic. In August of 2014, the commission voted 7-6 that the footage was genuine. Skeptics argued the motion in the water was caused by a frozen fishing net caught in the river current. The BBC analyzed the video and could not offer a definitive explanation. Icelandic biologist Helgi Grímsson has proposed a third theory. He suggested that gas bubbles escaping lake sediment, combined with folk memory of real visual anomalies, produced the illusion of an enormous creature. The Karanjkar hydroelectric dam, completed in 2007, diverted additional glacial water into Lagarfljót. That change increased sediment load and temperature variability. Gas releases from disturbed sediment may have become more common in the years after. Local tradition holds that seeing the worm above water is an omen. Depending on the region, that omen can be good, a sign of harvest, or disastrous, a sign of death in the family. Egilstadir embraces the legend commercially. A carved wooden sculpture of the worm stands in the town center. Tourism to the lake has increased each year since the 2012 video. The next cryptid we turn to across the Baltic in Sweden holds the distinction that no other creature on this list can claim. It was once protected by law. Number 3. Storsjöodjuret. The name Storsjöodjuret translates to the Great Lake Monster. Its local history begins with a runestone. The Frosø runestone, erected on Frosø Island around 1030 AD, is the northernmost runestone in the world. It commemorates a Christian missionary named Ásmundur who helped convert the region. Carved into the stone is the figure of a coiled serpent. Local tradition holds that the stone performs a binding function. The serpent carving was placed there to bind the creature to the lake and prevent it from harming the Christian community. The placement of the stone represents one of the oldest documented folk interventions against a lake cryptid anywhere in Europe. The first written description comes from 1635. A parish priest named Mogens Petersen produced a manuscript describing a great serpent that lived in Storsjön. The creature, according to Petersen, swallowed swimmers whole. The tradition was folkloric by then, but the manuscript gave it textual anchor. In local oral tradition, the origin story involves two trolls named Jotte and Kata. They were said to have boiled a mysterious liquid at the edge of the lake. The liquid grew and grew until something escaped from the pot and slipped into the water. Thereafter, the lake was home to a long serpentine creature that surfaced occasionally. In 1894, King Oscar II of Sweden authorized a commercial venture called the Lake Storsjö Monster Hunting Company. The company sold shares to finance equipment, iron harpoons, a giant baited trap, and surveillance boats. The harpoons and trap are still preserved at the Champlain Museum in Östersund. The company failed to produce a capture and eventually collapsed when funds ran out. Now, the strangest fact, in 1986, the County Administrative Board of Jämtland officially listed Storsjöodjuret as a protected endangered species. Under Swedish law, it became illegal to kill, injure, or capture the creature. The county board argued that even the possibility of a unique species warranted preservation. The designation lasted 19 years. In 2005, the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency ruled that a species must first be proven to exist before legal protection can apply. The protection was revoked. The sightings are well cataloged. Over 500 eyewitness reports exist. A notable example is the 1998 account by Ove Eriksson, who described a gray-green creature roughly 20 feet long near Östersund Harbor. That same year, the global underwater search team, known as GUST, led by Swedish cryptozoologist Jan Sundberg, conducted a formal scientific expedition on Storsjön. Their sonar and underwater camera sweeps recorded anomalous readings that could not be matched to known species. Sundberg led a follow-up sonar survey in 2008. In 2019, a research team from Mid-Sweden University conducted environmental DNA sampling of the lake. Their results found no unidentified large vertebrate markers. Sightings cluster in summer along the shoreline between Östersund and Hakås. That stretch of shore corresponds with heavy swimming and boating activity. Pike, char, perch, and trout live in the lake. The largest recorded pike was a 37-pound specimen. Östersund has turned the monster into a municipal brand. A sculpture of the serpent stands in a central square. It appears on tourism material and on local beer labels. What it means for a government to legally protect something that may not exist is a question we will return to later. For now, we move south and west to the far end of the Americas. Number 4. Nahuelito. The first documented settler sightings date to the 1890s. European settlers along the Limme River outlet described a large creature with a long neck surfacing in the shallows. Reports continued through the early 20th century when the creature acquired its tabloid nickname Nahuelito, a diminutive of the lake's name. But the creature's cultural roots run deeper. Mapuche oral tradition describes the water being called the Cuero del Agua, which translates to the hide of the water. In Mapuche folklore, the cuero is a flat, hide-like creature that wraps itself around swimmers and pulls them under. The morphology does not match the plesiosaur silhouette of later reports. That discrepancy is significant. It suggests that modern sightings may be layering a European cryptid template onto an older indigenous figure. In 1922, an American settler named Martin Sheffield wrote a letter to the Buenos Aires Zoo. He claimed to have seen a large creature with a plesiosaur-like neck in the lake. The zoo took the report seriously. The director, Clemente Onelli, organized a formal expedition. It was funded at 15,000 pesos, a substantial sum for Argentina at the time. Onelli and his team surveyed the lake for 3 months. They found no physical evidence. Sightings continued through the 20th century. In 1976, Alberto Poapel captured a photograph of a dark object with 3 visible humps approximately 300 feet offshore. In 2006, an Argentine Navy officer named Alfredo Leiva reported seeing a 30-foot creature with dark scales during a routine patrol. The Navy made no official response. In 1994, a sonar contact at depth was logged by an Argentine naval vessel, though no follow-up investigation was conducted. The standard skeptical explanation points to the southern river otter, Lontri provocax. This species can reach 6 feet in length and swims in loose groups. 3 otters in a line can produce a 3-hump surface pattern. The river otter hypothesis explains most low-resolution sightings, though not all of them. Nahuel Huapi's water clarity averages 20 to 40 feet of visibility during summer. That clarity lets swimmers see the dark blue gradient beneath them, but does not reveal the deepest sections. The lake has 7 major arms. Several of those arms are rarely surveyed. Year-round deep zone temperatures stay below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. In 2018, biologists from the Centro Regional Universitario Bariloche launched a multi-year environmental DNA sampling project. The study is ongoing. So far, no unknown large vertebrate markers have been identified. Across the Atlantic and Scandinavia, a smaller lake has produced one of the most scientifically documented cryptid encounters on record. Number 5. Selma. The first recorded sighting of a large creature in Seljursvatnet dates to 1750. A local man named Gunleik Anderson Verpe reported seeing what he called a seahorse emerging from the water. The term was used in Norwegian folk tradition to describe a serpent-like aquatic being. His account was recorded in regional parish logs. The creature's modern name, Selma, is a diminutive in the Norwegian folk style. It was popularized in newspaper accounts during the 20th century. Locally, the creature had long been understood as a variant of the Norwegian Alnik, a shape-shifting water spirit of older folk tradition. The Alnik predates the cryptid framing by many centuries. This layered mythology is one reason Selma reports vary so much in form. Some describe a long eel-like body, others describe a plesiosaur silhouette. Older folk accounts describe a creature that shifts appearance to lure humans to the water's edge. The Norwegian Cryptozoology Network has cataloged over 500 Selma sightings. The most scientifically significant encounter came in 1998. The Global Underwater Search Team, GUST, led by Swedish researcher Jan Sundberg, the same Sundberg who later worked on Storsjön, mounted an expedition on Seljursvatnet. The team used sonar, underwater cameras, and hydrophones. Their equipment recorded sonar contacts that matched the profile of a large mobile object. Their hydrophones also picked up unusual low-frequency signatures that could not be matched to any known fish species or mechanical source. The gust data remains unexplained. An earlier expedition in 1975, led by Norwegian researcher Bjørn Frøysland, had recorded a 25-foot sonar contact at a depth of 300 feet. In 2000, Swedish photographer Arne Thomasson captured a brief video on Selfjordsvatnet showing 3 dark humps moving against the surface current. Skeptics offer competing explanations. Atlantic salmon, Salmo salar, grow to more than 40 pounds in Norwegian lakes. Brown trout, Salmo truta, reach similar sizes. Pike in Selfjordsvatnet have been recorded at 50 pounds. A large pike breaking the surface can produce the humped wake pattern. The lake's thermocline, the boundary layer where temperature drops sharply, can create visual distortions during early morning. Seismic activity in the region occasionally generates standing waves on the surface. These can resemble a moving creature from a distance. The cultural layer complicates the science. Seljord village has incorporated Selma into its coat of arms. A biennial Selma festival celebrates the legend. Local hotels have historically offered small rewards for verified photographs. Norway's national newspaper Verdens Gang ran a multi-part feature on Selma in 1995. 18 eyewitnesses were interviewed in that series. They described different creature morphologies, suggesting either different species or different imaginative templates. What makes Selma distinct from most cryptid cases is the gust sonar data. Unexplained sonar contacts are rare. Unexplained hydrophone signatures are rarer. The data has never been published in a peer-reviewed journal, but it also has not been successfully debunked. Whatever the gust team recorded in 1998 remains a genuine open question. The next lake sits on the border between 2 countries and carries a cryptid with dual nationality. Number 6. Memphre. Reports of a large creature in the lake begin in 1816. A local farmer named Ralph Mary recorded in his personal diary that he had seen a creature resembling, in his words, a huge serpent with coils visible above the surface. In 1847, the Stansted Journal published a fuller account by a man named Uriah Jewett. Jewett described a 50-foot creature with horse-like features moving slowly in the deep section of the lake near Owl's Head Mountain. The creature acquired the nickname Memphre during the 1980s, coined by Jacques Boisvert. Boisvert was a retired Canadian diver who devoted the last decades of his life to studying the lake. He made more than 6,000 dives in Memphre. Many of those dives were at depth and in poor visibility. He logged extensive underwater video, some of which is archived at the Musée de Magog. In 1986, Boisvert founded the International Dracontology Society of Lake Memphre. The society currently catalogs 215 documented sightings. In 1983, a Newport resident named Barbara Malloy described a serpentine creature with multiple humps during a televised interview. Her account became one of the most widely circulated Memphre reports. She continued to advocate for the creature's study into the 2000s. In 1989, a joint U.S.-Canadian scientific expedition used sonar to survey the lake's deepest sections. 64 anomalous contacts were recorded during the survey. The skeptical biological picture is well understood. Memphre supports native lake trout, landlocked salmon, and smallmouth bass. The largest recorded lake trout weighed 43 pounds. Cold deep waters remain below 45 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, creating a thermal environment that could theoretically support relic species. That said, environmental DNA sampling conducted by the Université de Sherbrooke in 2015 found no markers for unidentified large vertebrates. Owl's Head Mountain is the center of sighting clusters. Locals refer to that section of shoreline as the Monsters Range. In 2001, tourists reported a 30-foot creature near the mountain. The Quebec Provincial Police filed a minor incident report. No follow-up investigation was conducted. Newport, Vermont has featured Memphre on the town seal since the 1980s. Magog's tourism industry brings in approximately $2 million each year from Memphre-themed tours and merchandise. 3 competing theories dominate the Memphre literature. The mainstream scientific view is that sightings are caused by large fish, especially lake sturgeon, which can reach 7 feet and create wake patterns resembling humps. The historical or folkloric view treats the creature as a cultural continuation of Abenaki water-being traditions shaped by settler amplification. The fringe view holds that a relic population of a plesiosaur-like vertebrate survives in the lake's deep zones, a hypothesis that has never found supporting evidence. Jacques Boisvert died in 2006. His archive of diving logs and underwater video is preserved at the Musée de Magog. What happens to a cryptid when its most dedicated researcher dies is an open question. Memphre sightings continued through the 2000s and into the 2020s, but their documentation has become more informal. The next lake is North America's most visually perfect alpine water, and the question it raises cuts at the heart of how these stories persist. Number 7. Tahoe Tessie. The native cultural substrate for Tahoe's cryptid is the Washoe tradition of Ong. Ong is not a lake serpent. In Washoe oral history, Ong was a massive bird-like being with a serpentine body and the head of a raptor. It nested on the lake and preyed on anyone who ventured onto the water. The morphology is fundamentally different from most North American lake cryptids. That difference matters. It suggests that modern Tahoe Tessie reports are a fusion of Anglo-settler plesiosaur templates with an older Washoe aerial predator tradition. Settler accounts of a large creature in Tahoe begin in the 1870s. Railroad workers on the Truckee side reported dark shapes in the deep water off steep underwater walls. The name Tahoe Tessie did not enter use until the 1950s. It was popularized as a marketing play on Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. The most widely repeated element of the Tahoe Tessie legend is the Cousteau story. According to local lore, Jacques Cousteau conducted a submersible dive in Lake Tahoe in 1976. Upon returning to the surface, he is said to have told his colleagues that the world is not ready for what lies down there. The quote is cited in hundreds of local sources. It has appeared on tourism brochures, in documentaries, and on beer labels. The Cousteau Society has never confirmed the quote, and no primary documentation has ever surfaced. There is no record that Cousteau ever dove in Lake Tahoe. The quote has become, in effect, folklore about folklore, a cryptid of scientific authority itself. In 1984, multiple witnesses on the South Shore reported a creature 15 to 30 feet long with humps visible above the surface. The incident was covered by the Sacramento Bee. In 1979, a tourist named Diane Stavros photographed what appeared to be 3 dark humps near Emerald Bay. Later analysis attributed the objects to a submerged log chain. In 2002, a History Channel documentary sponsored a submersible expedition to survey Tahoe's deepest sections. The expedition logged no biological anomalies. In 2021, the Desert Research Institute published a paper documenting acoustic anomalies in Lake Tahoe, attributing them to Seichi waves and internal wave reflections, underwater oscillations caused by wind and temperature layering. The biological skeptical picture is unusual for a lake of this size. Tahoe has no endemic large predator fish. Mackinaw trout were introduced in the 1880s and routinely exceed 30 pounds. A 37-pound Mackinaw held the Nevada state record from 1974 to 2005. No species in the lake could plausibly account for a 15-foot sighting. But the lake's geology provides a different kind of explanation. Tahoe has steep underwater cliffs and vertical granite walls that drop hundreds of feet within a short distance of shore. Large portions of the water column at those depths remain unsurveyed. Seichi waves produce surface disturbances that a distant observer can misread. Internal waves cause visible surface ripples when no wind is present. The Washoe tribe still regards Tahoe as sacred and has historically cautioned against disturbing deep water. South Shore businesses have sold Tessie merchandise since the 1970s. Tessie appears on beer labels, restaurant signs, and tourist maps. The Cousteau quote, whether or not he ever said it, is the real cryptid of Lake Tahoe. The story itself has become the phenomenon. Across the country, another lake produced the single most photographed cryptid in North American history. Number 8. Champ. Lake Champlain is a freshwater lake bordering New York, Vermont, and Quebec. It covers 490 square miles. Its maximum depth is 400 feet. It is the 6th largest freshwater lake by surface area in the United States. The lake takes its name from Samuel de Champlain, the French explorer who surveyed it in July of 1609. Champlain's original journal contains a passage that has shaped every subsequent Champ story. He described seeing a creature 5 feet long, covered in silver scales, with a horse-like head, and a jaw 2.5 feet long. Modern ichthyologists believe Champlain was almost certainly describing a long-nosed gar, Lepisosteus osseus. The long-nosed gar is still common in Lake Champlain. It has silvery scales and a long horse head profile. A large specimen fits Champlain's measurements closely. The gar hypothesis is widely accepted by the fisheries community. Champlain's sighting was probably not a cryptid, it was a fish. But the Iroquois and Abenaki traditions predate Champlain. The Abenaki called a creature in the lake Tadoskok. The Iroquois used the term Cheusaru, which Champlain himself recorded. These native traditions describe a large aquatic creature, though their morphological details vary. Whatever Champlain saw, it was layered into a cultural framework that already existed. The modern Champ story accelerates in the 19th century. In 1883, Sheriff Nathan Mooney of Clinton County, New York, reported seeing a 50-foot serpent visible from shore. His account was published in regional newspapers. In 1887, the showman P.T. Barnum offered a $50,000 reward for the creature's remains. The reward was never collected. Barnum's offer is a useful reminder that the cryptid economy has always been commercial. Reward offers, newspaper circulation, and curiosity tourism have shaped the record since its earliest years. In July of 1977, a Vermont woman named Sandra Monsey took what remains the most iconic Champ photograph. She was picnicking with her family near St. Albans, Vermont, on the lake's eastern shore. She captured an image of what appeared to be a long-necked creature with a humped back breaching the surface of Bulwaga Bay. She did not publicize the photograph for several years. When she did, the image was analyzed by researchers at the Smithsonian Institution and the University of Arizona's Optical Sciences Center. Neither analysis found evidence of manipulation. The distance, scale, and object in the frame were all consistent with an actual solid body of substantial size. The Monsey photograph has never been conclusively explained. In 1982, the Vermont State Legislature passed a resolution protecting Champ from any form of harm or harassment. In 1983, the New York State Legislature passed a similar resolution. Both laws remain in effect. 2 American states officially protect a creature whose existence has never been confirmed. That fact alone places Champ in a unique policy category. Joseph Zarzinski, a researcher who led the Lake Champlain phenomena investigation during the 1980s, cataloged more than 600 documented sightings. In 2003, Vermont-based researcher Dennis Hall recorded sonar data showing an object 15 to 20 feet long moving at depth. In the same year, Bob Gessner captured underwater video in Bulwaga Bay showing a dark vertebrate-like shape moving through the water column. Middlebury College conducted environmental DNA sampling of Lake Champlain in 2014. The study found no markers for unidentified large vertebrates in the surveyed sections. The biological skeptical picture centers on lake sturgeon, Atsepensor fulvescens. The species is native to Champlain and can exceed 7 feet in length. Sturgeon surface occasionally and create strong wake patterns. The lake also supports more than 80 recorded fish species. During the Champlain Sea period, roughly 12,000 years ago, what is now Lake Champlain was a saltwater inlet of the Atlantic. Some researchers have speculated that relic marine species could have survived the transition. No evidence supports that idea. Burlington, Vermont, hosts an annual Champ Day celebration. The Lake Champlain Maritime Museum in Virgin maintains a permanent exhibit on Champ. Ice roads historically cross the frozen lake in winter. Champ is more culturally embedded than any other North American lake cryptid. When 2 states pass laws protecting a creature that may not exist, the question is no longer whether Champ is real. The question is what it means that we keep asking. Before we close, it is worth looking at what the 8 cryptids we have covered actually have in common. Across all 8 lakes, a consistent set of morphological features recurs. The plesiosaur silhouette, long neck, humped back, short flippers, appears in Champlain, Nahuelito, Storsjön, Memphre, and occasionally Tahoe. The serpentine or eel-like alternative appears in Lagarfljót, Selma, and Bear Lake. Color palettes converge around dark green, gray, and muddy brown. Size estimates cluster in two ranges. The first range is 15 to 30 feet, often verifiable by sonar as anomalous contacts. The second is 50 to 200 feet, which no known vertebrate could sustain in a freshwater lake. Witness profiles show a pattern. The typical reporter is a local resident, often alone or in a small family group, observing from shore during calm morning or dusk conditions. Weather plays a role. Fog, low light, and glassy water surfaces produce the conditions most conducive to sighting. Distance estimates are notoriously unreliable over open water. Objects at 300 feet often appear to be at 50 feet. The hump count of 3 is the strangest morphological convergence. 3 humps appear in reports from Nahuelito, Selma, Champlain, and Lagarfljót. 3 is also the minimum hump count that produces a serpentine silhouette from a single undulating wake. It is impossible to tell from the data whether this reflects a real anatomical feature or an optical artifact. The cross-cultural horsehead feature appears in Storsjöodjuret, Champlain, and Tahoe. All 3 are unrelated traditions. Multi-witness sightings are rarer than single-observer reports, though they do exist. Sonar-confirmed anomalies are the rarest data class and the most interesting scientifically. No credible carcass has ever been recovered from any of the 8 lakes. The modern lake cryptid archetype emerged in the 19th century alongside European and American settler expansion. Joseph C. Rich's 1868 Deseret News article, Ralph Mary's 1816 diary entry, and Nathan Mooney's 1883 sighting all come from the same cultural wave. Newspaper journalism of the 1850s through the 1890s was a powerful monster story vehicle. Local papers in sparsely settled regions faced a demand for sensational content. Lake creatures fit that demand. P.T. Barnum's 1887 $50,000 reward for Champ's remains is a template, the 1894 Lake Sturgeon. Monster Hunting Company in Sweden is the same impulse, translated into Scandinavian corporate form. Both involve shares, public subscriptions, and commercial hunting expeditions. Both failed. Both reinforced the legends they were meant to resolve. Indigenous water spirit traditions were absorbed and repackaged during this period. The Washoe, Ong, the Mapuche, Cuero del Agua, the Iroquois, Chauacero, and the Norwegian Enmik were layered into European plesiosaur templates. Mary Anning's 1823 plesiosaur discoveries in Lyme Regis, England transformed public imagination of prehistoric aquatic reptiles. The silhouette of the long-necked, flippered plesiosaur entered popular culture through newspapers and natural history books. By the 1870s, that silhouette had become the dominant mental template for lake monster reports. Every witness who described a long neck and humps was, in effect, drawing on Anning's fossils without knowing it. The biological candidates for lake cryptid sightings are well known. Lake sturgeon, Actopensor fivescens, native to Lake Champlain, can reach 10 feet and over 100 pounds. Sturgeon surface occasionally, especially during spring spawning runs. Their long bodies and dorsal scutes create a serpentine wake pattern. Atlantic salmon, Salmo sailor, grow to over 40 pounds in Norwegian lakes like Selma. Brown trout, Salmo truta, reach similar sizes. Wells catfish, Silurus glanus, occur in European lakes and can exceed 10 feet in length. The Bonneville cutthroat trout in Bear Lake reaches 24 pounds. Giant pike, Essox lucius, grow to over 50 pounds and can surface aggressively in shallow bays. Mackinaw trout in Lake Tahoe exceed 30 pounds. The long-nosed gar, Lepisosteus osseus, is the most likely candidate for Samuel de Champlain's 1609 sighting. The giant otter, Pteronura brasiliensis, and the southern river otter, Lontra privicax, explain 3 hump patterns in South American and Patagonian lakes. Multiple otters swimming in line produce a convincing illusion of a single serpentine body. Non-biological explanations account for many more reports. Floating vegetation mats drift in strong currents. Waterlogged logs and tree root masses surface and submerge in thermally stratified water columns. Deadheads, partly submerged logs, are common in lakes with forested shores. Bubble trails from methane vents create linear surface disturbances. Siche waves are standing oscillations across a lake's length caused by wind and atmospheric pressure changes. They create surface ripples that resemble moving wakes. Internal waves at the thermocline cause additional surface distortions. Mirages and looming effects produced by temperature inversions over water can make distant objects appear larger and closer than they are. Boat wakes interacting with shorelines create interference patterns. Temperature layering produces refraction that bends light and changes apparent object shape. Any of these effects, alone or combined, can produce a reliable eyewitness report of a creature that does not exist. Formal scientific investigations of lake cryptids form a sparse but real literature. Clemente Onelli's 1922 Nahuelito expedition was the earliest government-funded cryptid search on this list. It found nothing. Bjørn Frøysland's 1975 Seljoordsvatnet sonar expedition recorded a 25-foot contact at 300 feet depth. No follow-up ever identified the source. The 1989 joint U.S.-Canadian Memphre expedition recorded 64 anomalous sonar contacts in the lake's deepest sections. None were ever classified. The 1998 Gust expedition, led by Jan Sundberg, conducted sonar and hydrophone surveys in Seljoordsvatnet. The expedition recorded unexplained sonar and hydrophone signatures. The results remain in the gray literature, never peer-reviewed but never explained away. The 2002 History Channel submersible expedition in Lake Tahoe found no biological anomalies. The 2015 Université de Sherbrooke environmental DNA study of Memphre found no unidentified markers. The 2019 Mid-Sweden University eDNA study of Storsjön returned the same result. The 2018 Centro Regional Universitario Bariloche, a DNA project on Nahuelito, is ongoing. Environmental DNA became the new cryptid search tool in the 2010s. Every living vertebrate sheds DNA into the water in trace amounts. A single DNA sample from a lake can identify every vertebrate species present. If a large unknown vertebrate lives in any of these lakes, eDNA should detect it. So far, no eDNA study has identified an unknown species in any surveyed lake. The null result problem is real. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. A lake with unsampled regions or a species that sheds DNA below detection thresholds could still harbor something unknown. Certain physical and cognitive mechanisms produce lake monster reports reliably, regardless of whether a creature exists. Thermoclines, sharp temperature boundaries between surface and deep water, cause light to bend. Objects viewed across a thermocline appear distorted in shape and size. Siche waves generate surface oscillations with periods ranging from minutes to hours. Standing waves can produce the illusion of a moving hump traveling across a lake. Internal waves propagate along the thermocline below the surface. They create subtle surface ripples that look like something is moving just beneath the water. Low light conditions at dawn and dusk compress color information and enhance shape ambiguity. Distance misjudgment over water is universal. Humans consistently underestimate distances to objects on open water. Pareidolia, the tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in ambiguous stimuli, is well documented. Humans are predisposed to see faces, animals, and bodies in random arrangements. On a lake surface, that predisposition produces creatures. Expectancy effects amplify the tendency. If a tourist has been told a lake contains a monster, they are more likely to perceive one. Confirmation bias causes witnesses to remember the features that fit the expected template and forget the ones that do not. Tourism economics create a feedback loop. Every new sighting justifies more tourism. More tourism produces more witnesses. More witnesses produce more sightings. Deep lakes produce more reports than shallow ones because deep water hides ambiguity longer. Isolation and low witness density make individual reports harder to cross-check. The commercial infrastructure surrounding these cryptids is substantial. Magog's tourism industry generates approximately $2 million each year from Memphre-themed tours, boat rentals, and merchandise. Bariloche runs Nahuelito-branded boat tours throughout summer, with thousands of tourists purchasing tickets annually. South Lake Tahoe businesses have sold Tessie merchandise since the 1970s, spanning beer labels, restaurant signs, and t-shirt lines. Bear Lake's Raspberry Days Festival features monster-themed floats and paddleboat cruises, leaving ideal beach resort. The Selfjord Festival in Norway takes place every 2 years, drawing visitors from across Scandinavia. Östersund's municipal sculpture of Storsjöodjuret is a branded asset that appears on tourism material and local beer labels. Newport, Vermont features Memphre on its official town seal. Egelstadier's carved wooden sculpture of the Lagarfljót Worm stands in the town center. Legal protection and municipal branding create permanent commercial incentive structures that make debunking economically irrelevant. 8 lakes, 8 cryptids, thousands of documented sightings across 4 centuries. No carcass, no conclusive photograph, no eDNA hit. The scientific record, where it exists, is consistent. These creatures cannot be found. And yet the watching continues. The impulse to see something watching back is ancient. A lake is among the most effective surfaces in nature for concealing what lies beneath it. The surface reflects. The water absorbs. What is below stays below. The witness, an ordinary person standing at the edge of a morning lake, not a scientist with instruments, becomes the only source of data. That asymmetry is part of the appeal. The fact that 2 American states pass laws to protect a creature that may not exist is not an embarrassment. It is a signal about how human cognition handles uncertainty. We hedge. We make room for the possibility. The difference between belief and hope is thin. The absence of evidence can itself become the story. Every lake contains something you cannot see. The swimmer knows this in the same moment they step in. Whatever is or is not in the water is now below your feet. That moment, not the cryptid, is the real phenomenon. Stage 6. Save to library, save to library. You now have 31 videos in the Deep Sea Explorer library.json. Pipeline complete through Stage 6. When you've pasted the script into the Google Doc and the voiceover is exported to download, say, run whisk and I'll kick off Stage 7.